how to learn. This is a lesson on how to learn to tie flies. Okay, you shouldn't be recording this, Dave, because
Just started.
well, no, then the deal is off, okay? Then the deal is totally off. Okay, so I'm using my favorite thread. I don't know if you can still get this thread, the Danville 3/0
Oh, monocord, yeah.
monocord. It's really nice. You can probably see it on the video here if you have a big enough screen. It's a flat thread, so if you unwind, if you spin your bobbin in the right direction, I'm not going to tell you clockwise or counterclockwise because that strongly depends on which way you're looking at it. You get it to lie down very nice and flat. Okay, so this one has a silver body with a rib. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by tying in a rib. And I just had the rib material on my desk. Where it is? Oh, there it is. So this is the Uni thread, the Uni brand silver wire in medium, which is thick enough for this operation. The reason I'm using a rib here, although the recipe I'm sure does not call for it, is because the silver tinsel that I'm using is a fairly fragile material, and adding a rib is going to take care of that problem. And here's the method that I was advocating earlier in use. So first attach the wire, and then I have this stuff that it's beautiful holographic tinsel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Canadian Tire was selling some Christmas ornaments at some point, and they had great big hanks of this stuff. And a guy from the local club here said, "Oh, look what I got!" And it was absolutely beautiful. So I figured, hey, why not? Now, if you want to make a really nice tinsel body, attach your tinsel in at the front of the hook. Okay? And then I'm gonna try to do this the rotary way, although I don't have a proper rotary bobbin here. So tying the thread, and then start. Don't overpressure this because it, depending on the tinsel you have, it may break on you. And also be careful, it takes a little practice to learn to avoid the hook point. So just go and just swinging in and out of the way of that hook point, and go all the way to where the wire is attached, and change the angle, and now it can go a little faster. There you go. Okay. So now I'm just gonna have to rewind the thread, so it's gonna take me a couple extra seconds using this bobbin. And 1 and 2, and then go in front of the tinsel and do another 2 or 3 wraps. And then this is, like I said, it's pretty fragile stuff, so you can just pull on it and it snaps right off. Okay. Now, when you tie rotary, if you don't happen to have one of those nice automatic bobbins, which are, yeah, they're expensive, what you can do is you can just let the bobbin hang. So pull off some thread and let the bobbin hang. Okay. And maybe even move it a little forward where you're going to have to build a head anyway. And simply take now your wire and rib the body. This is going to help this fly last a little longer. And as you can see, no harm done by not tying a knot in the thread. Okay, so bring the rib up front, tie the wire down nice and secure, and a few wraps in front. Hasn't caught in very well, so let me just give it extra insurance here. And then don't ruin your scissors, just twist the wire like this, and bang, it breaks. And then you take your little magnetic doodad, which I explained earlier, stick it back to your vise. It's not going to go anywhere. All right, so now we have a body. It's time to put on some feather stuff. Now, I've never tried this before, so I'm just going to try to see if I can wind a little bit of marabou up front here. So what I'm going to do is I went to the tip of the feather and I pulled off the stuff that's stiff. I'm not going to tie that in. I'm just going to tie it in at the point where the fibers on this feather become nice and soft. So just tie it in there, nice and solid. Cut the extra. And now I'm going to wrap this guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it a little bit. Now it helps if you have a little wet fingers, and I should have had a little pot of water here. I should have thought about that. Tying with marabou is one of those things where water is your friend. And keep folding. This is going to push the fibers back. Keep folding. And go one wrap in front of the other. Nice and tight. Keep folding. If you need to move the thread forward, you just kind of push it with your fingers to the front. And it's all gonna work very nice. Okay. I don't know, marabou usually compacts pretty well. So I'm going to be reasonably generous with the amount of marabou that I put in here. Now at some point my feather is going to run out, so I'll have to stop anyway. So just keep stroking this fibers back, and then do a couple of wraps here just to secure this in place, and then I'm going to do the tidying up later. So now this is secure enough, I feel confident to cut off the excess. And there we are. Now I'm going to gather all these fibers in my hand, just between my thumb and forefinger here. And you can see I have a clear path to finishing the head off. Just build up a little bit just behind the eye usually is important because there's sometimes a little gap there in the wire. And if you want your whip finish to be very neat, again, give the bobbin a bit of a spin to untwist the thread. And then one, and two whip finishes is what I normally do, and this means I can get by without using any head cement. And this is the fly. Does it look a little bit like the one you fish with, Bill?
Yes. Yeah, it looks nice.
So that's,
That's nice and bushy, eh?
yeah, the silver body. Yeah, I was, with marabou, I guess you just, keep at it, keep adding on wraps because it just, in the water, this shrinks to nothing.
Yeah.
Alternative materials, they're going to give you the same action but be stupidly expensive, would be Arctic fox.
Yes.
Very nice stuff, but 10 times the price and not easily available. Okay.
I like the idea of the rib.
Yeah.
I've done this
Dennis, you
for,
there?
sorry?
Yes.
That's
Yes, there.
that's your yellow fly, right?
Tied differently. I just had the one I saw used and it was successful. And I tried to copy was I just grouped the marabou in my hand and just tied it on the top of right across the top like a big wing, and that's the way I tied it originally. But this seems a little bit better. I wanted to be able to see the silver under the wing, whereas if this marabou is wet and flowing back, it's going to hide part of that silver, I think, anyway. But
Okay.
I think if it's yellow, it doesn't make much difference.
They'll see it.
We have time. If you want me to tie with wing on top, I can do one more.
No, that's good for me. It's
Yeah.
Okay.
The second fly that we were looking at there is the kind of woolly buggerish one. So here's another hook, and I debarb all my hooks out of principle. And so there you go.
Yeah, the souk is barbless fly fishing only for this fishery. But something I was learning is that any place freshwater BC stocks fish, you can use a barbed hook because they're stocking fish for kids and for gear fishing.
But I thought that in BC, any flowing water is single barbless, period.
No, not at all.
That's not
No.
true? Oh, okay. My bad.
If freshwater BC stocks it, you can use barbs and gear.
Okay. Okay, well, good to know.
Salt water for salmon is all barbless.
Yeah. Oh, and Dave, you mentioned that Gary Caton got stopped by a fish cop this week.
Oh,
It was fined. They tested in the salt water, right? They tested every single hook on board,
cool.
and they found a couple that he tried to crush the hook. It wasn't well enough. It caught on their Velcro, cost him $500.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's
But
going
every hook on board, they just took, show us what you got on board. Anyway, sorry, Florin, I interrupted.
So I'm hoping this is enough of a yellow-green color. Are you okay?
I go a little, yeah, it looks fine with me.
Okay.
Can I just interrupt for a second, guys?
Sure.
Yeah, can I pause this for a moment because I forgot to bring the flash. Just a second.
So, that certainly that would be a ticket that I would fight.
Yeah.
Because there was a BC conservation guy 20 years ago that went down to the Fraser River and caught a guy fishing. He didn't get the guy to reel the line in, but the guy so he gave the guy a ticket for fishing whatever, and it went to court, and the guy said, "Did you see what hook was on the end of my line?" No. Did you get me to reel in the line? No. Well, there was a practice bobber or plastic weight on that I was, because it was a brand new rod and reel and I was testing it out. And the conservation guy lost because he wasn't able to tell what was on the other end of the hook or what was on the other end of the line. So, you know, if I'd certainly question that ticket based on the fact that, you know, like I wasn't using that fly. It's there. All my flies are in my bag. I always carry them. And, you know, I think he'd have a probably good chance of putting some reasonable doubt in there because the guy, that wasn't the hook he was fishing with.
Well,
Right?
it depends because some of the regulations, for example, in the national parks, and you'd have to read the letter of the law to be sure. Because, for example, the national park regulations, like here up in Jasper, they very specific that you cannot have any lead weights, like, you know, split shot within so many meters of the water. Right? So they go as far as specifying, you know, like, no, you can't even carry the stuff. We don't care that you, now mind you, they never check, but they could if they wanted to really give you a hard time and you forgot some split shot in your vest, for example, you'd be
You'd be in trouble, yeah.
you'd be on the wrong side of the law. Yeah.
Yeah, they can test in fact, that's what they asked, is they wanted to see all his hooks. And if there was one barb, he was going to be fine. He had actually crushed down the barb and the Velcro the guy was using caught. He says, that's a barbed hook, even though it had been crushed down.
That's a little extreme.
I'd still fight it because then you could turn around and say, well, what method are you, what's the standardization of Velcro that you're using that, you know, because Velcro's got different coarsenesses.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree,
that
but
that's a legitimate way of fighting the,
And
you know,
and
what's your
what
technique
does
for-
what does the regulation say with respect to barb? How do they determine? Does it describe how it determines whether it's barbed or not?
well, my understanding, and again, I don't know the regulation, but if it, the one that, when I was in Tassus, Fishcock pulled the guide over, he had to bring out all his hooks. And the girl that was doing it had a nylon and she ran it across the hooks. He didn't, he had barbless hooks, but I would imagine that you have to be, I mean, I do the same as Florin. I take the barbs off all my hooks, but
still, again,
they're pretty tough.
one's using a nylon and somebody's using Velcro. It's got to be a standardized method of measuring to see if
Yes.
it is. I think
Yeah,
he'd
it
have.
clearly is not.
And that should be in the regulations, actually, that says what the standardized test is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean-
Well, there they, you know, they, again, coming back to the national parks, I asked one of these guys, you know, one time, and he was like, well, you know, this little brochure we give you is not, and there's a disclaimer there that the fact that you haven't read the full letter of the law does not absolve you from, you know, like
Right.
you can't just rely on the brochure. Now that's a bit of a flimsy defense. You know, we give you this brochure misleading you into thinking that this is all the rules you have to obey, but then you have a bunch of hidden rules somewhere else that I'm supposed to know about. You know, that's a bit off. Anyway, back to the fly tying. Which of these two colors of flash do you think is better for the tail? So this is a Flashaboo.
Dennis here, I always use the Flashaboo. Matter of fact, I got it right here myself. That's
There you
my,
are.
This is the Flashaboo Mirage, and this is the the Flashaboo standard. So what does your pack say? Is this the same one?
This
Polar Flash.
polar flash, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna go then with this one. Okay, I don't know
Okay.
if it makes a huge difference, but these are the colors that I have. And for the tail, I'm gonna use one of these, which looks to me like fairly close to what Bill was showing. And then I'm just gonna put this on. Oh, by the way, this is a new toy acquisition. It's a Tiemco adjustable bobbin. I've had one of those right bobbins that Dave uses, and mine, even after years of using it, still doesn't run very smoothly. It probably needs opening up and some sandpaper. And then I got this Tiemco one, which has the nice, thick, heavy ceramic tube, which is also adjustable. You can unscrew this top piece here and you can adjust the length of your tube. I don't think that's very useful. But then the adjustment, this is what I thought was neat about this bobbin. The adjustment for the tension is a magnet at the end of this screw that by loosening or tightening the screw, you adjust the distance between that magnet and the piece of metal, and that then changes the tension on the thread, and it's smooth as butter. So
And
it's an
what
indulgence, it's not a necessity.
and
Let
what does that thing cost?
Let's not go there. It's cheaper than an automatic Norvise bobbin. That's all I'm gonna say, but not by much.
Like
Okay.
100 or less?
Sorry?
100 or less?
Just around the 100 mark. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But like I said, I enjoy little pieces of well machined equipment, and this one certainly is. The fit and finish on this thing are just out of this world. Beautiful.
Yeah, the way a woman puts it is the boys and their toys.
Yeah. And I make no excuses about that. I was on a recent fishing outing with two gentlemen who fully understand this, unlike some of our better halves. And the question of gear came up, and I didn't have to have a conversation about you can't have too much gear, because they were okay with that. Oh yeah, more gear is better.
That was Dawn and
No, that was Michael and Wally.
and Wally. Yeah.
Yeah. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to gather some fibers off this feather and pull them off. And if they happen to be too long, I can always pinch them and break off the excess. So here they are. The tips are not perfectly aligned, but that's where I'm going to be doing the trimming after I tie it in. And I'm going to cut this short here because I want to be able to just tie it in. Okay, so this is trimmed. I should have brought my thread back. There we go. All right. So now measure again. Here's my tail.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I barely
Hold it at an angle here.
not
The
interested.
thread between my fingers and start doing a few spiral wraps going forward. What I'm trying to do here is
Yeah, but free
I'm trying to catch
I think that's why
this
is that?
marabou
Bye.
so I don't get a nasty mess on my hands. And then I wind my way back with tighter wraps to give it a reasonably smooth underbody. And in fact, if I look at this, I don't think I want to trim too much. Just pinch a few tips here to even out the tail. Something like that. And now I'm going to get some of this Flashaboo, which is all I've got in this kind of color. And here, I don't want too much if this works on the same principle as the standard woolly bugger does. So what I do is typically I gather 2 fibers. If I'm tying a dozen flies or so, I get a bunch of these fibers and then I keep them clipped as I cut from them. I keep them in a bulldog clip, which I don't have here on the desk to demonstrate. So what I do is I fold the fibers a few times. So now I started with 2, now I have 4. And now I'm gonna fold again. And that would be 4 on either side. So I think that's plenty. I'm wasting a little bit of material here. So I'm gonna gather these like this. I have a loop. Then I'm gonna put this loop over the shank of the, oops, I missed one. So I have now looped over the hook and I catch it with a thread. And then I pull back and hold them so that they end up nicely on either side of the tail. And see, I could have done another fly from this. And then just trim them to the length of the tail. And now I have a bundle of this Flashaboo on either side. Okay. Now for the body, I have something that I hope it's, just looking at that picture, this kind of looks to me like the right color. Is that close enough?
Close enough?
Okay. The alternative, probably this chenille is a bit too fine for this size of hook. So I'm just going to go with this. And this is what I was telling you earlier about. So this one came the usual thing in a packet like this on a piece of card. And that's pretty hard to handle. And I try to squeeze every last drop from these chenilles because sometimes you get a color that you can't find again, and you know. So I'm really stingy with some of the chenilles. So just put it on one of these old spools. Put a spool keeper on it, and you're good to tie. So here, just leave a little bit so you have something to catch the chenille on properly. Secure this to the hook and bring the thread. And actually here you can see there is a nasty gap in the wire bend at the eye of the hook. That's something I'm gonna have to fill up with a few wraps of thread. And you can easily break your thread there if you're not paying attention. Okay, so now I'm gonna take the chenille. Sorry?
I'm sorry. Yes, that's what I meant.
So now take the chenille and the vise, build the body. There you go. Nice and easy. Pull a bit more off the spool. You can very nicely control what's going on with your body when you're doing this. You know, if your thread has moved out of position, you can always unwind a few wraps of thread And then the other thing is you can hold the chenille. So here I'm gonna untwist the chenille so it's gonna lie down nicer. So as you, with the same hand, hold the bobbin with the chenille with between two fingers, and then with the third finger you can always push the thread a little out of the way so that when you're doing this, the thread stays at the eye of the hook and does not interfere with your material. Now, I did not forget that this needs some dumbbells. So I'm gonna attach the chenille now. And build a little bit of a thread head here. Cut it as close as you like. This is not going to go anywhere.
They can give.
Candace?
Okay.
Yeah.
This is the main body of the fly.
Couldn't before the screenings that they do there, but now they can.
Dumbbell. There we go. And here's some dumbbells, 4 millimeter, whatever the designations on these things may vary. I don't know exactly what the 4 millimeter thing is, the diameter of the eye perhaps. Anyway, this is heavy enough to flip the fly over. Alternatively, instead of dumbbells, you can use some bead chain eyes. And if you want to keep with the color theme of this fly, you can buy now chartreuse green painted bead chain. So, you know, if you care about the color. So now, basically, you take advantage of the thread bump that you already built for the head. The problem with dumbbells is usually they tend to slide forward. And if you have something to tie them against, in this case, the head of the fly is already built, you can just easily go on top and the cross. You do a few cross wraps and you use nice strong thread, and this stuff is not going to go anywhere. Then you have enough room in front and you can do a couple of nice web with finishes. There you go. 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. Tighten. 1, 2, 3, 4 turns. Tighten. Keep the thread under tension. Cut. And there's your fly.
Very nice.
Very nice, Florin, and a couple of techniques I hadn't thought of, so I'm going to try them.
Okay. Well, enjoy.
Great, thank you.
Thank you for sharing all these secret all the secret flies that catch fish for you. Not everybody does that, you know. I have to say that it's nice to have a bunch of people who are willing to tell their secrets for how it works.
So, Florin, we have enough time that I can do one of the flies that I had put on
You can
the.
probably do both, depending
Well,
on how much technical stuff you want
No,
to get.
I did the other one not that long ago for the guys, and so it's very similar. The Abbey is very similar to the one I did a couple of weeks back that had a two-tone body. It's just got a single-tone body on it. So I don't think I'll repeat that one. What I'll do is I'll do the one called Hardy's Favorite. And I'll do a highlight here. Spotlight so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'll need to adjust my iPad so you can get the hook placed where you can see what I'm doing. So this is a 9671 mustad. So this one is a size 12. Thread is 8/0 black, and this is uni. Uni is a little bit like, if you're careful with it, you can actually make it flatten out a little bit. But I don't, it's a fine enough thread. I don't think that's an issue. So I'll start right behind the eye of the hook here. Get my good scissors. Hey, I actually ended up sharpening these scissors the other day.
Oh, can you do a session on how to sharpen scissors? Because
Well,
I am keenly interested in that.
these ones are really hard to do a good sharpen because they have a serrated edge. But I have a little diamond tool. Maybe I can show that to you. This is a Lee Valley product that I bought many years ago. This is all had diamond on it.
Mm-hmm.
And all I did is put it in the vise and then just gently dress it at the right angle. And then you just, once you put the burr on, you have to go up the flat side and undo the burr. But it worked really good. I was worried about the tips on these not working well. And I managed to fix them up. Okay, so the first piece of material on here is golden pheasant crest. So to keep the body of the fly being relatively even, I'm going to make sure I dress the hook right down to with thread, nice and even, right down to the bend of the hook. And right at the bend of the hook, I'm going to do what Florin did a little bit for the dumbbell eyes. I'm going to build a little bump with fine thread right at the very back. And then when I get that little bump built, I'm going to put the thread in front of it. And the purpose of that is that when I put the tail on, I want the tail to sit up. I don't want it to go bend down. And that little bump will help do that. Golden pheasant crest, if you can get the actual golden pheasant, you get these sorts of things. And they all have different spacing between the black. And so what I do is I go through and try to pick a feather that's not got too long a spacing. And I try to make one that's not too short. So I'm going to pick one that's sort of in between. And you can see that's about gap width, that's the spacing between the black and the stripes. What I'll do is I'll take off a fair chunk like that and pinch them so the ends are even and pull it right off the stem. So now I got all those little black thingies lined up. I'll set this down on the hook so the closest black is right where the bump is. And I will put the thread over and cinch it down. And you'll see that little bump has made the tail kind of stand up a little bit. Then I'll smooth the butt ends down the shank and wrap over them in open spirals right up to near the eye. And doing that means that I don't have a bump where I've tied the tail in. The next thing is this body has a rib, and the rib is peacock herl. So there's my peacock herl, and I didn't bring my really good peacock herl in, but this stuff's not bad. And you can see what I want is this stuff that's got a fair bit of fuzz. So I'll take this and just trim off the bare part of the peacock herl. I'll do the same thing in reverse as I did with the butts on the tail. I'm going to wrap generally back over top of that to take the peacock herl all the way back to where the tail starts. And that's there. Now I too have these things. I don't have the fancy little magnetic thing poking through there because I don't have my vise is stainless steel, so magnets don't stick to it.
They
If
will
you-
stick to your collar there at the top only.
Yeah, it'll stick to this, but everything else is
Oh, and there's another thing that will probably stick to if you have a screw
Oh, yeah.
holding
yeah, there.
that screw is usually
Yeah.
good for this.
So this is red floss. So it's none of this material is nothing particularly. They said red or burgundy. So with this, I just stick a little bit out the front. Now, I've always had trouble with this uni thread. If you let it hang, it tends to unspin. If you're wrapping, it tends to unspin. So what I do is before I start wrapping forward to tighten that up, I will give it a spin underneath, which you can't really see there. But what that does is that tightens it up. And also it means that when you throw a soft loop, the loop falls towards the back of the fly rather than the front. Makes it easier to make that pinch lap. Right. Get back to the back. Bring my thread forward. Trying to keep that, pardon me, that body even. I can set this thread in there like that for the time being. And then I don't have your fancy bobbin, so I'm going to tie a half inch or two right at the front. And I'll bring my bobbin holder up here, which will make some things a lot easier. Now this floss is very much, it goes flat or spun tight. So what I want to get a nice smooth body is I want it to be a little bit spread, not too far, but a little bit spread out when it hits the hook. So you see there's a little bit of a flat thread here. It's not spun really tight. Oop, that caught a piece of the hook there. Got to watch out for catching this floss with the hook point because it will pull a strand out and look ugly. And then I'll make close wraps with that spread thread. See how the thread is spread out there? And I'll wrap that right up, all the way up to about an eye width behind the eye. And then I'll spread it out a little more, write it all the way back. And by spreading the floss out, you get a much more even body. And that's a little too much. So I just give it a counterclockwise twist. And that'll bring it back in again. Yeah, should have tightened that up. When I get up to the front, I'll stop right there. And as Florence says, you keep the tension on that floss so it doesn't fray out. A couple of times through on the back side. And then I always like to lock these materials in with a couple of wraps in front so that there's no likelihood that they're going to pull out with a fish tooth grabbing on them. And trim them down nice and snug. Then I can take my peacock herl, and I just do an open spiral up the floss body, trying to keep them even. And you see how that peacock herl stands out when you do that. It gives it a nice fuzzy rib and adds some context to the, some contrast to the red. So now that's done. So there's my tail and my body with the rib. And now for the wing. And we'll talk a little bit about materials for the wing. It's turkey flat or turkey tail. This would be a good one, except it's a little bit too dark because it's got the same amount of material on the left side as on the right side of the stem. And by doing that, when you cut your wings, you can either have them go this way or you can have them tint like this. And for these wet flies, I like to have them tint. Now, if you've got a turkey feather that is asymmetric like this one, that's really hard to do. So you want to get these turkey feathers that are symmetric around the stem. Either that, or you can get them where they're kind of left side and right side. So this is two turkey stems. One's the left side, one's the right side. And you can match them up so I can turn them in where they'll go. The other ones are like this. This is the same. I have mismatched, but I can take this part of the feather to make my wings for small flies. And if I want to do a big wet fly, I can take this half of the feather. But you got to get the matched pairs for that.
Dave?
Yeah.
I just want to put a plug in. Last Tuesday, we had a box of those.
Yep.
And I saw you take a couple and I took a number of them, all donated by by a member. It was really nice.
Yes, very nice. Those were actually peacock feathers. And as I told you last week, finding duck quill these days is almost impossible to get good duck quill. So I noticed those nice brown pheasant ones, and they look like they'd be really good for quill wings. That's why I grabbed a couple of them right off the bat.
You mean peacock?
No, yeah, peacock, yeah. So with this, what I'm going to do is to get the same, as I showed you last week, if I take my scissors in at a kind of a 45-degree angle, I can guess how wide a wing I want. Put the tip of the scissors right at the quill and snip. And then I can pull that off. And those fibers will stay together nicely. Now they're all melded together. Nah, I'm gonna have to do another one because that one separated. So we'll do another one. There we go. So there he is. And I'm going to put him down so the colored side in front of me on the bench, so the colored side is facing down. Then I can do the same thing on the other side of the quill. Again, that scissor in at the 45-degree angle. And I will go scissors tip right up to the stem, the same width. And I can get those pretty darn close to being exactly the same width. Then I'll lay this one down on top of the other one on the bench that is, or on my fingers here, to line the ends of them up, the tips of them up, so they're all nicely lined up like that. Measure the wing back just shy of the tail, end of the tail. And hold it right there. Take my thumb and forefinger of my left hand and pinch right where I'm going to wrap onto them. And this is the key with these things, is to bring the thread up in between your fingers so that it's held with your fingers loose. Down the far side of the hook, but don't pull down. Bring it back up loose in between your fingers. When you get there, squeeze hard and pull up. Do the same thing down the far side of the hook and back up in between the fingers and pull up. Now you can put it down and you will see that what I've done is I put that wing right smack on top of the hook. And it split a little bit on me. Yeah. That's the problem with not having good quills. Oh well, oh well. Now I'm going to cut off the butts and hold them in place here and make a bit of a head. Don't want to go back over where I've tied that wing in. That's gone kind of crazy on me. Oh well. Usually the quills stay flat as long as the fibers are sort of hooked together. Now the last thing is the beard, and for this I'm going to use partridge. And I've gone through the little bag of partridge feathers I've got, and I've selected ones that I think are a good size. These partridge ones, they when they come out of the bag, they're curled. So I use my thumbnail and I go on the back side of them and try and take the curl out. And I've stripped off all of the fuzz off the quill. And I'm going to say I only need about there. So I'm going to take some of these feathers off. So I just have a little bit, probably back a little past the point of the hook. And I'll hold that on the side of the hook here, and I will have it there. Got it. So now I've got these things. Put the stem just on this top of the hook. And I'll wrap the stem gently, a couple of wraps. And then I will pull the stem towards the eye of the hook so that it brings the partridge just to the point of the hook. Then wrap in front, sneak in here and snip off the last bit of that. And that thing's gonna sit down. So I'm gonna come down and pull the partridge forward and put one little wrap behind it to make it stick down from the hook and finish the head. And a decent head is not bad on these things. If you're using head cement, it will give it a little bit of a gloss. And then we'll do a so the mottled turkey, I think if you get the wing to sit right, which I didn't quite get this time, makes a really nice looking fly. Ideally, it would be something like a duck quill that holds its stuff together fairly well. But this will work. So there we are. That's the basic guy.
Very nice.
There we are.
How would you fish that, Dave?
Beg pardon? Like
How
you
would
would
you-
any wet, like you would any wet fly.
Down and across, eh?
Yeah, down and across for the most part. You control these. You know, if you do the classic wet flies, you could fish durants and just troll them.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
okay.
Just a slow troll. I think that's how Ron Duncan. He used to use classic wets fishing for durants. He used what that was. It was one particular pattern he used a lot. Kind of like a March Brown. And I think, you know, that if they look like, when they get wet, they look like they're an emerger of some kind, I think. But they've been around for well over 100 years. So they must work.
Those classics, they do work.
Yeah, they are.
Dave, let me point out another little trick for the rotary tying.
Yep.
Sometimes you don't even need to tie on. You don't need to tie on a knot when you rotate the vise. You can do this. So but you have to have a standard hook. Rather,
Yeah.
you can't do this with ring eye hooks very well. It
Okay,
doesn't work. But if you have a standard hook, notice what's happening. You can pull this gently, just over your bobbin.
Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And now you can just leave it there.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to do anything. So you can skip a step.
There
See?
you go. Don't have to do the half hitch.
You don't need any half hitch. You can just
Okay.
flip over, but you just have to have things properly lined up. That's
Yeah.
kind of the only.
Yeah, I took a lot of trouble when I'm doing this to make sure that the top of the bobbin rest, which is down here, will line up with the hook shank. And then when you don't want the hook going up and down as it rotates, and with this particular vise, which is you've got this little screw on the, I don't know, you can see on the bottom of the vise that allows you to move the shank of the vise up and down to get the eye of the fly dead lined up with the center of the bobbin.
Mine is not even dead lined up. See, it's a bit of it's at a bit of an angle, but not much.
Yeah.
And you can get by because you don't always tie on the same size hook, so you can vary the size of the hook a tiny little bit, and this will still work for you. So this will save you time and would make this whole thing, because a lot of people buy vices that have rotary capabilities, and if you're like me, don't use them for years on end because you think it's too much fussing with stuff.
Yeah.
And in fact, look, I'm not even using a fancy rotary bobbin or anything super duper like that, and bingo. And then I took I took to Hard Dennis's advice, and I mounted the wing on top and put a bit of flash on the sides because I couldn't help myself.
I might have been better off to use these feathers for the wing because they look like they're going to hold together better. The web is much better. The little hooks on the barbs of the feather, they seem to hold better on this particular one. So part of the trick in tying these wets is to make sure you get good material selection. Picking the right materials that will hold together when you're trying to put the fly together. So I have a whole raft of turkey feathers, some of which are good, some of which are questionable.
It's really hard to get good stuff. It's easier to find goose shoulder than duck quills.
Yes, as a matter of fact, you weren't here for that one, I think, Florin. The last wet fly I did used goose shoulder, and I like the way it came out.
The fibers stick well together, and this is what it seems to me like. This is what a bunch of people use for tying whatever married wings and stuff.
Yeah, I actually have my goose shoulder.
Another trick to do when you do the wings on top, if you don't want the fibers to foul in the bend of the hook, because that's something that happens a lot with marabou and fox and the soft stuff like that.
Yeah,
I think Dave showed this trick several times. You lift the wing up and you do a few wraps of thread at the base where the wing is tied in, behind the
Yep.
wing. And
Yep.
what that does is it gives the wing a lift, so it won't.
So,
I have a mess on my hook, but you can probably see how the wing
right.
is lifted up a little bit. So that helps a little.
So if you put me back on spotlight, I can show you. This is goose
Yeah,
shoulder.
no, I'm stopping this. I'm sorry. Yeah.
That's goose shoulder there. And the trick with that is you buy a bag full of it, and then you look for the goose feathers you're going to use that don't have this fuzzy stuff up on the side if you're going to do those standard wet fly wings. So you probably end up using a third of the feather where it's got a nice sharp edge on the wing edges. So yeah, that's how I tied the last couple, was using shoulder. And the trick is literally when you cut the one slip off, put it on the deck in front of you so the curve faces up, put the other one down on top, and then pick them up with the ends of the wings lined up. And then you can tie them in so they look nice and they're tented over top of the body. And if you tie them right smack on top, sometimes they'll split. And I've seen some guys who tie those wet fly wings, they put them down a little bit on the sides. So there's one wing on one side and one wing on the other side. I find they tend to split a little bit if you do that, but each his own, I guess. So that's it for me today. Anything else?
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Good, we'll stop the spotlight and we will stop the recording.
That was very good winging.